one of the Congresswoman's telephone town halls before, you may recognize me as the moderator. If this is your first time joining a telephone town hall, great. We're so happy to have you. My name is Peter, and I will be moderating tonight's conversation. Congresswoman Dexter is excited to hear directly from you. You can ask the Congresswoman a question live tonight by pressing *3. You can also subscribe to her newsletter by pressing *6, and a member of her team will take down your email. You can also subscribe directly from her website, dexter.house.gov. Again, to ask a question live with the Congresswoman tonight, hit *3. Now, I am incredibly excited to introduce Congresswoman Dexter.
Thank you so much, Peter, and hello, everyone. I am indeed Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, a mom, a physician, and the very proud United States Representative for Oregon's 3rd Congressional District. I host regular in-person town halls for one simple reason. My job title and job description are one and the same. It's representative. Hearing from you helps me best represent you in Congress. Over the past several weeks, I've traveled across our district, and whether it's the groundbreaking of a new affordable housing project, a tour of a local manufacturing facility, a community celebration, or a farmer's market, I have been reflecting on what an enormous privilege it is to serve this district and community in Congress. And that's why I'm so committed to representing you and your values. I know right now it's extremely easy to feel overwhelmed and to tune out, but that is exactly what Donald Trump wants. It's his playbook. Flood the zone with chaos, instill fear and mistrust, keep people distracted, and divide us until we tune out. Because when we tune out, he wins. But we can't let that happen because you deserve better. Our children deserve better. We deserve an America where hard work and following the rules pays off, where you can afford a safe place to live, where healthcare is available when and where you need it, and where your government puts people ahead of special interests. I'm here to fight, and I'm here to fight for the future that you deserve and rightfully demand. And that's why I'm hosting this town hall tonight. It's to hear your concerns, take your questions, and strategize a path forward. Thank you again for being here. I'm looking forward to your questions and to this conversation. To ask something live, press *3. If you're not already subscribed to my newsletter, press *6, and a member of my team will take down your email and get you signed up. You can also go on your own to dexter.house.gov and sign up there. Another way to stay connected and share your concerns is on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, X, Blue Sky, Threads, YouTube. You can see what I'm doing with you and for you nearly every day. So, all right, I'm anxious to get to your questions. Let's get started. So please press *3 to ask a question.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Now, before we get underway, I want to introduce a member of Congresswoman Dexter's phenomenal casework team, Elena. Our caseworkers are bilingual, and we offer translated materials. If you are having trouble with a federal agency, our office is here to help.
Si le gustaría recibir un resumen de este foro comunitario, hacer una pregunta o necesita ayuda con una agencia federal, por favor llámenos al 503-231-2300 o en línea en dexter.house.gov. Gracias por acompañarnos esta noche. Esperamos poder responder a sus preguntas.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Elena. Now on to our first question. We have an online question from Hope from Gresham, who asks, Congresswoman, what do you think about the National Guard in D.C.?
Oh, Hope. Thank you so much first for joining us and for your question. Just Trump's unilateral deployment of the National Guard in D.C. over the objections, let's just be clear, over the objections of local officials is yet another clear step toward martial law and an authoritarian state. And this is clearly not about safety. It's about power and control, and to distract you from the fact that he is doing nothing to make life better for people in this country. That's why I helped introduce the Safeguarding the Use of National Guard Act to increase congressional oversight of deployment of the National Guard. And what we're seeing in DC cannot be normalized and accepted. We have to continue to, I don't know, I can't say revolt, but to certainly not allow this to be carried forward into other cities, which he's already threatening to do from what I understand. So this is a time for us all to stand up and to say this is unacceptable, this is un-American, and we refuse to accept National Guard overriding locally elected officials.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Now we have another question from Jim as callers are calling in. Jim from online, who asks, what can Oregon do to help fight against the Republican grab for more seats in the House?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So spineless Texas Republicans are working with Trump. They're giving him what he wants. They're suggesting that 5 more Republican congressional seats are his for the taking. And they're trying to ensure that Republicans stay in power in the House after the 2026 midterms. It is election rigging in plain sight. It is absolutely taking away the power of the vote of the people to determine who represents them. And it is un-American. California Governor Gavin Newsom has been in the news a lot. I think he's doing a beautiful job fighting back, refusing to let this happen on his watch. And he has, with many of my colleagues from the California delegation, a counter redistricting proposal that will go into effect if it is rigged in Texas. It will have a equal and opposite reaction in California. And it is limited. It wants to prioritize independent redistricting committees. But for this time, fighting fire with fire, Newsom and the California delegation are really elevating our ability to fight back. And I'm very grateful to the governor. I stand with him. And whatever it takes, we cannot stop fighting for free, fair, and democratic elections, and to not rise to the level of rigging right now, I think is being complicit with their taking away our power of the vote. And it is a disgusting time, but we will be judged for what we do in this time, and we have to fight for the country that we all need and deserve, and that is a republic where your vote matters.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Now up next we have Valerie from Hood River. Valerie, you are live with the Congresswoman.
Thank you. Are you going to present my question?
No, you are.
Go ahead and ask the Congresswoman.
Okay. So I'm very uncomfortable with what's going on with the National Guard in D.C., and it feels to me like a silent coup where the strongman, creates power in his immediate sphere, and I don't know how we can fight against that.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Valerie, for calling in. And certainly, I think you're articulating what a lot of people are feeling. And I think it's the same playbook. It's intimidation and fear, and whether it's the people of Washington, D.C., or the elected representatives of people across this country, like myself, who are going to be coming back to D.C., it is clearly a strongman tactic to try to silence us and keep us from feeling capable of doing what we should do, and that's to represent the views of our constituents, which may or may not agree with that of our administrators. So I understand that people in Washington, D.C. are speaking up and showing their dissatisfaction with this, and we have said repeatedly through this last 6 months that we have to stay loud, we have to stay engaged, we cannot sit back, and that is exactly what we need to do, and be courageous, and I certainly will implore my colleagues to do the same. We cannot be intimidated by the military being deployed to Washington, D.C., and there's certainly a lot of irony that he would not call them on January 6th when the Capitol was being stormed and an insurrection was being attempted, and now he's bringing it when D.C. has the lowest crime rate it's had in 30 years, and they're certainly not even deployed to the areas where crime is more common. So this is nothing to do about keeping D.C. safe and everything to do with intimidation. And so thank you for your concern. I, too, am very concerned, and I will absolutely be fighting back.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Up next, we have Becky from Portland. Becky, you are live with the Congresswoman.
Hi, I have a couple questions. I'll just kind of roll it into one. First of all, I really want to know what the Democratic Party is actually doing to make some changes and assure that the next midterms are not Republican held and that there's a change and a shift. It feels like from just a citizen perspective that a lot of kind of the Democratic legislators are just kind of sitting back and letting things happen, and yet we have 1, 2, or 3 maybe strong leaders like Newsom and some of the other ones that have kind of stood up to President Trump and some of the things that are happening. So I'm just wondering why we don't come together as a party in some sort of summit and have a strategy lined out, for the next 18 months as a group collectively. Is there too much division, or what's keeping that from happening?
Yeah, and thank you, Becky, for calling in and certainly for your question. What I'm hearing you articulate, that you're frustrated by what is perceived as a lack of action or leadership from the Democrats, is really resonant. I'm hearing it a lot. You're certainly not alone. And what I would just say is we are doing what we can in the places where we can, and it can be stronger without question. Like, I think we must rise to this occasion. I said it before. We have to fight fire with fire. We have to be strong where we can. But the fact of the matter is, Gavin Newsom has the ability to fight back in the same way that Texas is being asked to. But if you run through the numbers here, the Democrats are going to really have a hard time fighting fire with fire for every state that is willing to redistrict and to cave to Donald Trump. We don't have as many options in Democratic-held states, frankly, because many democratically held states have independent citizen commissions and do not have a timeline that they can respond in like manner. Just taking redistricting as one example. The other thing I need to really be clear about is I represent every single person in this district, and it is not about Republicans and Democrats. It's certainly a Democrat majority district, thus my election, and there are not unified feelings about how we respond in this moment. And I must defer from talking about Democrats and Republicans and really focus on what I need to do, and that's represent your interests. Your vote needs to count. Your vote has to matter. If we jerry-rig this country's electoral system, it doesn't matter, and that undermines each and every one of your most important power in our country. And so that is where we need to go all out. We need to make sure that people understand what's at stake. We need to call out what's happening and be very loud about that. But at the end of the day, I am concerned that if every Republican-held state caves to Donald Trump and allows overt gerrymandering and cheating to take away elections out of the hands of people, that there are not sufficient numbers to counter that. And that is an incredibly dangerous path for us to be on. So we need to stand up in the courts. We need to stand up in the public sphere. We need to stand up in our states. And we need to do everything we can to fight this. But we don't have the power to overthrow everything, or, I think that people feel like there's a lack of response. Believe me, we are trying to make sure that we respond where we can with the power that we have. But the sad truth for me in the minority is that our power is limited, and the Republicans are governing, frankly, better than we thought without any collaboration with, I wouldn't say better meaning a better outcome, but they are managing to do what they want to do, what Donald Trump wants them to do, without collaboration with any Democrats substantively, and that has removed our power.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Up next, we have Rob from Portland. Rob, you are live with the Congresswoman.
Hello, Congresswoman. My concerns are twofold. Being able to fight in your presence, in your position, is one thing. Having more of a fight, more broadly, like saying having special elections for more people, having more voices, people who, including people who are not in publicly held offices. Your fight would go a lot further if we can have a lot more voting rights. Like Republicans are trying to take stuff away from us. Having laws designed that are to protect the middle class, and actually having more voting rights, so they can't just overreach and take things away from us.
Yep. No, I really appreciate that perspective, Rob, and you are exactly right. Like, the reason they are able to do this is because we have allowed it. One, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is an incredibly important law that is being threatened right now, and it is possible that the Supreme Court is going to deal yet another blow to it in coming months, and that is extremely concerning. So what is happening right now is clearly out of an authoritarian playbook where you consolidate power in the executive branch, and the judicial branch is basically handing that power over to the executive branch. And Congress has also handed over that power. We are allowing our appropriations. We're supposed to have the power of the purse. We are allowing, and I say we, it's the House and Senate Republicans are allowing the president to determine where our money is going to be spent, and he is spending it illegally in places and illegally taking it away from places where it's supposed to be going. And we, as Democrats in these legislative branches, do not have the votes to override our majority Republican-held seats. So we absolutely are at an incredibly dangerous place right now, where power is consolidated in the executive branch. People are deferring in the Republican Party to an authoritarian leader who wants to consolidate power and threaten our ability to have free and fair elections. You are spot on accurate there. And we, as Democrats, need to continue to call it out. We need to fight in the courts against this, and we need to win elections, frankly. And this is an official side meeting, not talking about elections, but the fact of the matter is that elections have consequences, and if we want to protect things, we need to get into the majority so that we can reestablish firmer laws and divide power amongst the three branches so that we once again have appropriate checks and balances. We are out of alignment right now, and we have to get back in alignment. And it won't be until the American people demand that balance of power that we will be able to do it. Public opinion matters greatly here. When people refuse to accept this consolidation of power, we will have a chance of fighting back. But honestly, folks, we need you to stand up and make your voices heard, which is exactly why we're here tonight. And I appreciate you speaking up, Rob.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. And before we get to our next question, just want to remind everybody, if you'd like to ask a question, you can dial *3. Again, to ask a question with the Congresswoman, dial *3. Now, our next question, we will go to Ed from Portland. Ed, you are live with the Congresswoman.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, Congresswoman. Pleasure to talk to you. Hi. I agree with you that the most important thing is the vote and protecting the vote and making sure that it's a viable instrument in our democratic republic, which it's very much in danger of not being anymore. And my question was, it's twofold. I mean, I don't really have a problem going down the road of trying to gerrymander as much as we can in response to the Republican attempts. As long as, I mean, what they're doing is not necessarily outside of the confines of the law, however immoral and unethical. And I can see the argument that, all right, yeah, the same thing has to be done in response, which is what Newsom's doing, what Hochul in New York is considering. I believe she's in New York. Anyway, how can we encourage people to participate more in grassroots elections, right down the chain, school boards, town elections, city elections, county elections, more so than I think is being done. And the other thing is, with all the disinformation going on about, I left two examples, Trump's executive order to outlaw mail-in ballot. I mean, it's a secure form of voting that I've ever come across. I've been voting by mail. I mean, I voted in mail in New Jersey when I lived there, and out here you have to vote by mail, or well, that's the best way to do it. And it fills all the boxes that voting restriction advocates want. I mean, to get registered here, you have to have two different types of ID. You have to present yourself in person, and your signatures have to match. But anyway, those are my questions. Basically, how can we fight the disinformation, and what can we do to encourage people to participate more in elections all the way down the line?
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you calling in, Ed. So I think those two are very clearly connected, and I think you've drawn that connection here, that information is how people make an informed decision when they go to the ballot box, and unfortunately, misinformation is really clouding our shared understanding of what real and what not real is. People do not get reliable information from the internet. I know that's shocking to some people, but there are not journalistic principles that are being followed by many folks who are pandering in rhetoric and misinformation that is leading to people making decisions that is, frankly, against their own best interest, because they are being indoctrinated or misinformed, whatever we want to say. It's very dangerous. And it is one of the most important founding ideas is a free and fair, or a free press, that we need to be held accountable with transparency, and that sunlight is the best disinfectant for corruption. We do not have that free press that is robust and supported in this country, and that is leading to us making horrific decisions against our own best interest. So the first thing I would say is support your local press, your independent press, certainly our National Public Radio and OPB affiliate and all the affiliates. Like, we understand that special interests and shareholders lead to different priorities than centering truth. So that's first. I think we need to really think about another policy mechanism for protecting and supporting the press after this. I think that's a clear issue that we need to think about as a body in Congress. The next thing about elections, we in Oregon have some of the most accessible, secure ballots in the country. And one of the things that we've done is automatically the motor voter registry There have been very few problems with that. Those have gotten elevated, but the vast majority of people are registered to vote appropriately and have access to a ballot and can do that in the safety and security of their own home and be able to get that in at a time that works for them. It is fundamental to Oregon's elections, and it is something that Donald Trump is trying to threaten. He wants to eliminate mail-in ballot or mail-in voting, and that has nothing to do with election integrity, and has everything to do with his desperation to cling to power by silencing our communities and our ability to share our perspectives. So this is 100% something that we know works. Vote by mail is easy, it's secure, and we'll fight to protect it no matter what. That's not the only thing you were talking about, I know that, but that is absolutely on a lot of people's minds. How do we get people to care? They have to see that elections have consequences. If there is not another thing that you can learn from this last election, is that when we elect somebody, and he did win the majority, he was fairly elected, unless we find other, realities there, but the impression that we have is that Donald Trump was fairly elected by the majority of people in this country. Elections have consequences, and we have to start fighting back locally and across the board to protect those ballots and to make sure that people's voices are heard. And the only way we can do that is if a press is free to cover the news without conflict and to be able to report to a community that can read it. And right now, disinformation and all the things are really impacting that. So your connection of those two dots is incredibly important. And I probably talked enough, so I'm going to stop.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Now, before we get to our next caller, we are going to pause for a quick poll. As many of you may know, at every telephone town hall, Congresswoman Dexter asks, what's the number one issue you want her to be focusing in Washington, D.C.? We know there is a lot going on, but if you had to pick one issue, what's the issue that matters most to you? You can respond right now using your keypad on your phone. Press 1 for healthcare, 2 for the economy, 3 for immigration, 4 for protecting democracy, 5 for housing, and 6 for something else. Again, if you have to choose just one, what's the issue that matters most to you? Press the number that best fits your priority. Again, that's 1 for healthcare, 2 for the economy, 3 for immigration, 4 for protecting democracy, 5 for housing, and 6 for something else. Now, while we wait for responses to come in, a quick reminder, if you ever need help with a federal agency, please call our office at 503-231-2300. Our caseworkers are bilingual, and we can provide translated materials to make sure you get the assistance you need.
Si le gustaría un resumen de este foro comunitario, hacer una pregunta o necesita ayuda con una agencia federal, por favor, llámenos al 503-231-2300 o en línea en dexter.house.gov. Gracias por acompañarnos esta noche. Esperamos poder responder a sus preguntas.
Thank you so much, Peter and Elena. And the first thing I want to just thank people for is being here. We have nearly 10,000 people who have joined us tonight. It really matters to have this kind of engagement. So just thank you for answering the phone and for staying on the line. Now for the results. Once again, democracy is the number one, protecting democracy is the number one issue from the vast majority of respondents. 75% of people said protecting democracy is their top issue. The next one is something else. Next, it's 6%. 6% is healthcare, and then 5% is immigration. So we are all in alignment for the most part here, that people fundamentally believe that protecting democracy has to be the top issue. And I will just make it clear that two things can be true at once, that we want to protect our democracy and still care deeply about these other things, and I recognize that. I really, really appreciate you're taking the time to answer that. And Peter, I think I hand it back to you. Is that right?
Absolutely. Well, up next, we will have Christopher from Portland. And Christopher, you are live with the Congresswoman.
Hello, Congresswoman. It's a pleasure. I'm very concerned with what's going on in Gaza, and I'd like to know if you have an interest in seeing AIPAC register with FARA as a foreign agent, and if you're interested in cutting funding to Israel for military aid.
Great, and thank you so much. And you certainly are not alone. We know that an enormous number of our community and across the world are horrified by the ongoing massacre in Gaza. The mass killing of civilians, the blocking of desperately needed humanitarian aid, the weaponization of hunger. These are not just avoidable man-made tragedies, they're war crimes. This is absolutely an atrocity that is reprehensible, unacceptable, and the full world should be standing in opposition to it. We are clear in this office that I will continue to fight to get UNRWA back to delivering humanitarian aid in Gaza, that I will not support the offensive weapon transfer to Israel, that the Netanyahu government is not the people of Israel. The Netanyahu government is perpetuating war crimes and is in every way behaving in a way that, as Americans, I believe we cannot stand with. And as long as Netanyahu is in power and is leveraging a decimation campaign against Palestinians, we have to stand in opposition to this. And this is clear in our laws that we don't deliver military aid to gross infractions of humanitarian international law, and that is exactly what we're seeing right now. So I hope that people understand that the actions that we take as Americans right now have consequences, and we need to stand together in opposition to what's happening right now.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Now, up next, we have a question from Jeff from Portland. And Jeff, you are live with the Congresswoman.
Hello. Actually, with Trump kicking out all the homeless people in D.C., it got me thinking about homelessness across the country. And there's one statistic that I've not heard anyone address ever. When I purchased my first house in 1988, it was $22,000. Minimum wage was $3.35 an hour. Now, minimum wage is $16.30 an hour, and that's amongst the highest in the country. However, that house is now worth $361,000. That's a difference of 16 times compared to the minimum wage, where it only went up 4.8 times. If wages aren't keeping up with real estate, how is my daughters going to be able to purchase a home?
Yeah, Jeff, we are struggling with this across not just Oregon or Portland, but across the country. And this is one of the most fundamental red flags that our democracy is sick when the middle class cannot afford to work hard and play by the rules to afford to live and not just survive, but to thrive. We have absolutely become inequitable economically in a way that is unsustainable. We know this amount of economic inequity leads to revolutions in countries, and we are obviously seeing a very dangerous precedent set here. When people cannot find security, even when they follow the rules and work hard, they become angry and they start lashing out at each other. And that is what we're seeing. So I grew up working class. I was able to afford to purchase a house after I finished medical school with the help of loans that gave me a leg up. I just literally had conversations with our local credit unions about this today. We have to create a world where people can work hard and play by the rules and expect that they can keep their children housed, that they can go to good schools, and that they can get the health care that they need. These fundamental rights are not something that only belong in the wealthiest households. It belongs in every household in this country. And so your point is very well taken. Wage inflation, we keep hearing about how expensive wages are for different folks, teachers, nurses, different folks. They still can't afford to buy a house. So no matter what has happened with wages, the inability to afford housing has continued to climb, and it has to be addressed. And this is a policy failure in the same way that hunger is a policy failure. Food and shelter needs to be something that we as Americans make sure that anyone who is working hard and playing by the rules can afford. And that is something that I will commit to you. I am only here able to represent you because of well-funded public schools, affordable housing, and a union job that gave me the ability to live my life securely, to pursue an education. What I had opportunity to do needs to be the opportunity that our children have to do. And my kids are right there with you. They do not believe that they will be able to afford to buy their own homes. And that is a failure of our government to do the right thing for people. And I will fight like hell to make sure that we get back to a middle class being strong. And my last point here is when the middle class is the biggest is when democracy is the securest. And so all of you who want to care about want me to prioritize democracy, the way to do it is to mobilize and protect the middle class.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Now up next we have a question from George from Portland. George, you are live with the Congresswoman.
Hello, Congresswoman. I wanted to know if anyone had proposed a bill to outlaw masks on these federal agents in our state. And if not, why not?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question. And George, I think that it is not just has anyone, but how many? Because I think there's at least 6 different bills right now, including one that Representative Jasmine Crockett and I introduced just recently, combating law enforcement anonymity by requiring identification disclosure, or the Clear ID Act. And that legislation would protect our communities from immigration law enforcement officers who are abusing their position of authority by prohibiting the use of taxpayer dollars to fund immigration law enforcement operations where officers hide their identity, and requires officers to clearly both verbally and visibly identify themselves. They cannot refuse to answer what their officer ID number is. They must have clear designation of who they work for and what their ID is. This is absolutely reprehensible that they can cover their faces. And I am being told that it's because people support them covering their faces because they're afraid of being doxxed or being marginalized by their communities. Well, if you're doing something that your community doesn't approve of, then you probably shouldn't be doing it in the name of the government. And so we have to stand up again for people's rights over government takeover. And that is something that so many of us believe, that there's at least 6 bills out there right now. And Congresswoman Bonamici has introduced one, Senator Wyden. There's many of our delegation who are involved in these policies because it is so important for us to be able to trust that the person who is detaining us actually works for the government, is doing it in the name of law, and that we are subject to not just the law, but the principles of due process and being protected to be able to defend ourselves in the court of law.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Now we'll turn to Rachel from Portland. Rachel, you are live with the Congresswoman.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for supporting our communities and the broader communities, and I apologize for the background noise. I wanted to ask a couple of things. One, we're in a place where we're largely being reactive and not strategic. I think our party is not particularly well organized. Other people have mentioned that. But specifically, I think it would be helpful to people here to have explicit points of action so that we can instruct our family members and community members on how to respond, and also our arms, our local police officers and sheriffs and counties, so that they can actually resist as conscientious objectors as well. This kind of thing has happened before. There's precedent set, right? How can we help the people who are within the system that do not want to follow the instructions that they're being given, so that we can support them in these situations? If there are, 5 people on the ground in a specific situation that have been told to do something, and even if 2 or 3 of them can respond in a legal manner where they refuse to take an order that is not lawful, I think that we can make some headway there, but nobody's really talking about specific things they can do. And so they're scared, right? And then about the voter issue, specifically, I don't hear anybody talking about the scenarios of what will happen if we don't have mail-in voting. Because very specifically, you will have disabled people, parents, working parents, working 2-3 jobs, elder folks that won't even be able to get to ballot boxes. Nobody's talking about those actual things and spreading that information across the parties. It's not a party issue. It means that regardless of what group you're in, you're not going to be able to vote if you can't get to the ballot, or if you're disabled, like some of us, and can't stand for more than 5 minutes, you're not going to be able to stand in a line in order to vote. So there's a lot of very, very, very explicit scenarios that need to be discussed in detail, and less of the, there's a lot of very general talk going on and not a lot of specific instruction, I think, for people. And I think that's what people need. They don't know what to do when they're faced with it. So I think, again, even if there's pamphlets that have specific legal actions that law enforcement and people can carry with them, so that if they're given an instruction they don't want to do, they can say, okay, I'm taking my right to not do this at this time. And then specific talking points for people.
Yep. So thank you, Rachel. We know very clearly that having something tangible that people can do is something people are yearning for right now. One thing that absolutely is happening, and I think your point that, again, you're similarly elevating, that there's a feeling that we aren't giving people tools to use. And in fact, that is not what I'm seeing, but it's because I am an insider. I'm seeing what other folks, I know that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is going out throughout her community in the Bronx and helping people learn to know their rights and to have those red cards in their hands so they can fight back when they are being illegally detained, and so that people can speak up. We know that there's legal observers going to courts where when people are being detained without a warrant signed by a judge, that they try to stand in the way and to stand up for the rule of law. We know that people are doing these things, and yet the feeling is that nothing's being done. So the one thing I want people to understand is you do have power. You must know your rights. You should have a red card that the ACLU and many other groups have readily available, and we have brought to our town halls, so that if you are detained or you see someone else being detained, that you can encourage them to stand up for their rights and to share with them what their rights are, or if you are being detained. That is one way that we can empower ourselves. Another is being legal observers at courts and in immigration centers and other places. We need to make sure that people with privilege, usually meaning not being racially profiled, can be in a place where people are more likely to be marginalized and taken advantage of, and to be able to stand in there. The community is how we are going to fight this. Courage is contagious. We need to stand up for each other. If you see somebody being thrown to the ground, pulling out your phone, recording it, and getting in there and understanding what you can do to help is really important right now. Being silent is complicit. And I don't mean that like we are all at fault, but if we allow things to happen that we know are wrong without speaking up, that is how we get to a worse place in our country's coming days. So standing together, understanding what those things are, going to trainings. There are many trainings on how to get engaged right now. And part of our challenge, we talked about this earlier, is there isn't a reliable way for people to get information. There's no Walter Cronkite at night that everyone hears and understands what they can do, because we all have so many different algorithms on social media, or we go to the certain sources on YouTube or on podcasts. We're just not getting the same information. So I know this because folks repeatedly are telling me that nobody's doing anything, and yet I'm seeing it across this country, and you aren't hearing about it, which means that our information sharing mechanisms are insufficient and are undermining our ability to protect ourselves, our neighbors, and our country. So thank you for the question. I also understood, your point about eliminating mail-in ballots will marginalize our elderly, our disabled, those who are working 3 jobs to try to keep the roof over their children's heads. 100% you are accurate, and that is why we need to fight like hell for our mail-in ballots and to protect them from Donald Trump's authoritarian takeover.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Now we will turn to Jason from Hood River. Jason, you are live with the Congresswoman.
Yeah, hello. This is Jason. I have a question about dismantling of government agencies. I worked for the federal government for almost 20 years, and it's really disheartening to see what's happening with the dismantling of like agencies like USAID and such. So my question is, once the Democrats hopefully get back into power at some point, how much of this dismantling can be put back together?
Yeah. No, thank you, Jason, so much. And I hear the clear concern in your voice, and I certainly share it. You made the point that we have to be in power. That is true. That what the agencies are a part of the executive branch. And the executive branch, for better or worse right now, has nearly unilateral authority to undermine the ability of those agencies to function. Congress established many of these agencies, and so they can't be like the Department of Education is being decimated. People are leaving, people are being fired, but the agency still exists. But if it's non-functioning, is it real? And that is really, it's a puppet agency in many ways. Like it's not serving its purpose that Congress intended. And so what we need to do is pull back an inordinate number or an inordinate amount of power out of the executive branch. Our country's executive branch has been empowered over time to be nimble and decisive rather than the slow bureaucratic process that Congress has, the legislative branch. And what we have done is given the benefit of the doubt that our executive actually cares about doing the right thing for American people and not being self-serving and giving billionaires a leg up. And unfortunately, what has happened is our consolidation of power in the executive branch, which was done, with good intentions, has undermined our ability to be responsive to somebody who doesn't care about the American people being protected. And that is what we have right now. So it will, again, elections have consequences. We must correct, and most likely we will overcorrect. And then people in future years will be frustrated that it takes us too long to get things done. And that will be a consequence of trying to redirect the branches of government to have balances of power again. And Congress has to earn the trust of the people again by showing that they center people's voices, that working Americans who are playing by the rules and working hard need to have stability, that we eliminate corruption. We need to get big money out of government. We have to stop trading stocks ourselves. We have to become trustworthy individuals to be able to then do the right thing for the people. So we cannot just rebuild what we had. We have to make it better when we, once again, hopefully have more power to speak for the people. And I feel very strongly that it is, again, the voters who will demand and hold us accountable, but you've got to know what we're doing. And again, it's the free press that's really critical to that.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, and thank you, Jason, for the question. Now, before we wrap up, our team wants to check in on an issue that's very important for Rep. Dexter to know and really relevant, especially to what Rachel was saying around how, and inform how the Congresswoman stays in touch with the district. So how do you all primarily receive your news? You can answer on the keypad on your phone. You can press 1 if you primarily receive your news from traditional media like print journalism and cable television. Press 2 if you primarily receive your news from social media. And press 3 if you primarily receive your news from new media sources like podcasts and YouTube videos. Again, press 1 if you primarily receive your news from traditional media like print journalism and cable television. Press 2 if you primarily receive your news from social media. And press 3 if you primarily receive your news from new media like podcasts and YouTube videos. And I will hand it off to the Congresswoman.
Thank you again, Peter, and to everyone who is answering our questions. We're seeing those responses coming in. So I am just going to once again reflect on the importance of this moment in time and making sure that people are engaged. Please stay in community. Please build connections. What we are seeing is being able to instill fear and intimidation through isolation and fear. And how we must fight that is building community, understanding what's happening, and finding power by standing up for each other. And so I really hope that each and every one of you will work to do, if you voted for democracy, get out there and fight for democracy. And we will continue to share resources, and we will make sure that we really focus on tangible things that people can do, because we continue to hear that that is important to folks. And how do you know where you want to focus that? That's from the media. So the answers to this question, again, are really appreciated. This one, traditional media, that was option 1. So print journalism and cable news or traditional network news. 56% of you said that that's how you get your primary news. 28% said it's new media, podcasts, YouTube videos, those sorts of things. And then 16% said social media. And I will just share that is probably generationally divided. We know that older, more traditional the older constituents tend to use traditional media. And the new media and social media tends to be in younger generations, and we know that there has to be options for everyone in reliable news sources. And so again, please support your local public radio station, OPB, and others. Please, pay for that print journalism subscription, or the online subscription. If you appreciate a certain news source, we need to support our journalists right now more than ever, and really appreciate that so many of you are going to our traditional media. All sides of the political spectrum are not using similar information, and that leads to a lack of trust in government, because what people may understand as reality is not consistent with what the actual actions are. So when a press is not fair and balanced, it tends to tell a story that is, self-fulfilling or has a bias that clearly does not give a balanced reality. And that leads to distrust, and that leads to frustration and We really need transparency. It's the number one way that we are going to rebuild trust. But if we're being transparent, nobody knows about it, that still isn't functional. So we have to invest in our press. I will keep showing up for you all in Congress. I will keep fighting for your rights, your families, your future. Again, I am a kid who grew up in a working class family. I understand what it is to work hard. And I also understand that when you believe that playing by the rules will get you to a better place, you work hard to get to that opportunity, but people don't feel like no matter how hard they work, they actually have access to opportunity. So first thing I'm going to fight for is making sure our democracy is safe. Next is rebuilding the middle class, making sure that people have economic opportunity, getting access to health care when you need it, and fighting corruption. We've got to rebuild trust in government. And all of these things are connected, but those are absolutely the pillars of my work, and I need you alongside me. Please stay in touch with my office. Keep showing up for our town halls. Once again, thank you to the 10,000 people almost who showed up tonight. We need to continue to stand in community against this authoritarian takeover. History will judge us for how we behave in this moment. I am fully clear on that. And I believe in this community. I believe in you. I am so grateful for each and every one of you who have reached out, and we've got to keep showing up for each other. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again next time.